You know, sometimes the biggest disasters in history don't start with a grand plan or a massive betrayal. They start with something tiny, a single, unbelievably small mistake. Think about it. A diplomat's severed head, a mistaken word at a press conference, a forgotten memo to a driver, or even just a hungry bear. These aren't the big headline moments, but they are the quiet, almost unbelievable accidents that act like a single domino, setting off a chain reaction that completely reshapes the world we live in. We're talking about catastrophic irony. The moments where history took an immediate and irreversible left turn. Get comfortable, because these stories prove that when you change one small detail, you change everything. Let's start with a classic example of hubris and catastrophic misjudgment. In the early 1200s, Genghis Khan and the growing Mongol Empire were technically at peace with the powerful Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. They were more focused on problems in China. So, when a Mongol trade caravan entered Khwarezmian territory and was attacked by a local governor who stole the goods and killed the merchants, Genghis Khan didn't launch an invasion right away. Instead, he did something diplomatic. He sent a delegation of ambassadors to Shah Muhammad II, the Khwarezmian ruler. The request was simple: punish the rogue governor and restore justice. But the Shah made what many historians now call the worst decision in history. Instead of simply apologizing or punishing the man, he chose to double down on the insult. He had the chief Mongol envoy brutally killed, severed his head, and sent it back with the other humiliated diplomats. In Mongol culture, harming a messenger was a violation of the most sacred code. It was a declaration of war so profound and unforgivable that it demanded only one response: total annihilation. Genghis Khan had no choice. He paused his campaign in China and unleashed a destruction machine unlike anything the world had ever seen. The Mongols didn't just defeat the Khwarezmian Empire, they wiped it off the map. Entire cities were leveled, and the population suffered a horrifying fate. The death toll reached millions. All because a Shah refused to punish a greedy governor and instead chose to insult the most dangerous man on earth. Now, let us fast forward to the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. The closest the world has ever come to full-scale nuclear war. It was a time of extreme tension, and every American military base was on high alert. One midnight, at a U.S. military base in Duluth, a guard spots an intruder climbing the perimeter fence. Thinking this was the opening move of a Soviet sabotage attack possibility, military planners had prepared for the guard, fires his weapon and immediately triggers the sabotage alarm. This alarm was supposed to automatically alert all nearby bases with a similar sabotage signal. But here's where the mistake happened. At a nearby base in Wisconsin called Volk Field, there was a wiring error. The incoming sabotage signal didn't set off a simple alert. It set off the nuclear launch klaxon siren. The pilots at Volk Field, sitting at high alert DEFCON 3, had been told absolutely, positively, that there would be no practice drills at this level. When that klaxon sounded, they believed World War III had begun, and their nuclear-armed fighter jets were ordered to take off. By the time the officers on the ground realized the mistake, the jets were already taxiing towards the runway. Think of the terror. One officer jumped into a car, sped onto the runway, and desperately signaled the pilots to stop. He managed to wave them down just in time, and the intruder who started this countdown to global annihilation. It wasn't a Soviet saboteur. It was a confused, hungry bear. We were literally saved from a potential nuclear exchange because of a frantic race in a car, triggered by a hungry animal and a faulty wire. Switching gears to espionage in the 8th century, Byzantine Emperor Constantine V had a major problem with the Bulgarian ruler Teutoburg. Constantine had repeatedly failed to defeat Bulgaria, but he had a secret weapon, a highly effective spy network right inside the Bulgarian court in Pliska. He always knew Teutoburg's plans. Teutoburg, however, wasn't stupid. He eventually figured out he was being betrayed from within. He then came up with a brilliantly simple, yet utterly ruthless, plan to destroy his enemy's intelligence network. He sent a secret message to Emperor Constantine, pretending he was finally ready to defect and join the Byzantine side. But there was a catch. He claimed he needed to know the names of the emperor by agents so he could ensure their safety and smooth their escape from the capital when he left. Here is the unbelievable part. Constantine V, the sophisticated Byzantine emperor, believed him. He trusted Teutoburg's sincerity and sent him a complete list of all his spies operating in the Bulgarian court. The result? Teutoburg had zero intention of defecting. Once he had the names, he immediately rounded up and executed every single Byzantine agent. In one move, Constantine V's entire, costly, and vital spy network was wiped out thanks to his own gullibility. Sometimes, history turns on a single, poorly chosen word. In 1989, East Germany's ruling Communist Party was discussing minor, cautious reforms to ease travel restrictions to West Germany. They wanted to manage the flow, not open the floodgates. Gunter Schabowski, the party's new, unofficial spokesperson, was tasked with announcing some details at a press conference. But the government hadn't prepared him well. At the press conference, a journalist asked a critical question. When will the new travel rules take effect? Schabowski, shuffling through his notes, couldn't find the correct, complicated, staggered timetable. He panicked, looked up, and simply said, "As far as I know, ... immediately." That single, immediate, unscripted word changed the world. East Berliners, who were watching the conference live on television, thought the Berlin Wall was now completely, finally open after 28 years. They rushed to the checkpoints. The border guards, utterly confused, had no orders. They hadn't been informed. But the crowd was growing fast, yelling, chanting, demanding entry. Finally, not knowing what else to do, one of the officers gave the order and opened the gates. Within minutes, it was pandemonium, a massive, joyful celebration. People were climbing the wall, hugging strangers, and crossing freely between east and west. At 11:30 p.m. on November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall began to fall. Not because of a political decree, but because an unprepared spokesman said one wrong word. This next story is a chilling example of what happens when central planning ignores the laws of nature. In 1958, under the umbrella of China's Great Leap Forward, a massive environmental campaign was launched, targeting for pests, rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. The Eurasian tree sparrow in particular was blamed for eating grain and reducing crop yields. Mao Zedong believed that man must conquer nature, and the war on sparrows became a national obsession. Millions of people, including children, were ordered to participate. They destroyed nests, smashed eggs, and, most famously, banged pots and pans for hours to keep the birds from landing. The goal was to exhaust the sparrows until they literally dropped dead from the sky. The campaign was horribly successful. Sparrows were virtually wiped out across much of China. The propaganda celebrated the victory, claiming the grain was now safe. But they forgot one thing. Nature is complex. Without the sparrows, the populations of insects and locusts, the sparrow's primary food source, exploded out of control. These insects consumed the crops at a devastating rate, far worse than the sparrows ever did. This ecological disaster, combined with other failed farming policies, directly contributed to the Great Chinese Famine, which killed tens of millions of people. By 1960, the government quietly stopped the anti-sparrow campaign and had to begin importing sparrows from the Soviet Union. The unintended consequence of a minor ecological error was national catastrophe. Our next historical figure is Thomas Midgley Jr., an inventor often cited by historians as having had the greatest negative impact on the Earth's atmosphere of any single human being. Midgley was a genius chemist at General Motors in the 1920s. His first world-changing invention was adding a chemical called tetrathyl lead to gasoline. Why? To stop engines from making that annoying knocking sound. He knew it was toxically. Factory workers suffered terribly, but it worked beautifully, and leaded gasoline was soon being pumped worldwide, quietly poisoning the air and people for decades. His second world-changing invention was Freon, the first chlorofluorocarbon, or CFC. It was designed to be a safer, non-flammable cooling agent for refrigerators. It was so effective, it later became a staple in aerosol sprays and inhalers. The problem? Years after Midgley's death, scientists discovered that CFCs were eating a hole in the ozone layer, the vital shield that protects all life on Earth from the sun's harmful UV radiation. So, one man invented two highly successful products that became almost universally adopted, and both ended up causing massive global, long-term environmental and public health crises. It's a tragic kind of historical irony. And here's the final, sad detail. Midgley became paralyzed by polio later in life. He invented an elaborate system of ropes and pulleys to help him get in and out of bed. In 1944, he became entangled in his own invention and was accidentally strangled to death. The great inventor was killed by the very thing he created to help himself. We often hear about the Battle of the Atlantic, but less about this accident that changed the course of World War II. In May 1941, the German U-boat U-110 was hunting Allied ships in the North Atlantic. After sinking several, the U-boat was successfully chased and depth-charged by British warships. Severely damaged, the German commander, Fritz Julius Lemp, was forced to surface. The Germans prepared to scuttle the U-boat, which meant sinking it quickly so their secrets, especially the Enigma machine and its codebooks, would be destroyed. The British ships moved in. Commander Lemp was desperate to destroy the Enigma before capture. But the boat wasn't sinking fast enough, and he disappeared in the water. Meanwhile, a small group of British sailors, realizing the U-boat was abandoned but still floating, made an incredibly risky decision. They boarded the sinking German submarine. In a race against time and the incoming seawater, they recovered the prize, a working Enigma machine, and, critically, the codebooks that showed how to use it. The British kept this success completely secret, letting the U-110 sink and officially pretending the Enigma had gone down with it. The codebreakers at Bletchley Park now had the key to reading secret German naval messages. This breakthrough allowed the Allies to track U-boats, reroute convoys, and is widely credited with helping the Allies win the Battle of the Atlantic and, by extension, playing a key role in the overall victory of World War II. All thanks to a damaged submarine that simply refused to sink on command. Sometimes, the downfall of a great empire is simply a matter of a poor investment decision. In 1452, an incredibly skilled engineer and iron founder named Orban approached Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI. Orban, from the Kingdom of Hungary, had a proposal. He could build massive, world-changing cannons. Constantine XI was intrigued, but the Byzantine Empire was, frankly, broke. It was a shell of its former self, crumbling and lacking the funds and resources to support Orban's ambitious, expensive work. He rejected the engineer, citing financial constraints. Orban, needing a patron, simply walked across the border to the camp of Sultan Mehmed II. The Ottoman leader, who was actively preparing his army to besiege Constantinople. Mehmed II immediately saw the value in Orban's proposal. The Sultan gave Orban unlimited funds and resources. In just 3 months, Orban built a cannon so large it became legendary. The basilic. This immense weapon had to be pulled by 60 oxen and required hundreds of men to load and fire. The basilic played a key, decisive role in the siege of Constantinople in 1453. Its terrifying power was instrumental in breaching the city's ancient, mighty walls. The refusal of a single payment by a short-sighted emperor directly enabled the fall of the Byzantine Empire, an empire that had lasted for over 1,000 years. Finally, let's look at a disaster fueled by misplaced trust and supreme overconfidence. In 09 AD, Publius Quinctilius Varus, a Roman general, was in command of the new province of Germania. He placed enormous trust in one of his officers, a Germanic noble named Arminius, who had been trained in Rome and served in the Roman army. Varus saw him as fully Romanized and completely loyal. But Arminius was secretly working to unite the Germanic tribes against Roman rule. That summer, as Varus and 3 entire Roman legions, upwards of 15,000 to 20,000, professional soldiers were marching back to their winter base, Arminius told Varus that a small local rebellion needed his attention. Varus believed his trusted officer and led his legions off the main road and deep into a dense, remote forest. This was the trap. In the thick, rain-soaked forest, the Roman legions were stretched out, unable to fight in their famous formations. Arminius instantly defected and set off the ambush. The ensuing battle of the Teutoburg forest lasted for several days, with Germanic warriors who knew the terrain fighting a brutal, successful guerrilla war. Almost the entire Roman force was wiped out, and Varus committed suicide rather than be captured. The loss was so devastating that Rome gave up all plans to conquer lands beyond the Rhine River forever. Emperor Augustus was said to have walked the halls, crying, "Varus, give me back my legions." It was a permanent defeat that defined the northern border of the Roman Empire and set the stage for later invasions that would finally bring the Western Empire to its knees.
So, there you have it?
From a simple turn in the road to a single word in a press conference, history is not always a grand narrative of kings and armies, but a fragile tapestry that can be ripped apart by the smallest, most unbelievable accidents. The sheer irony in these moments is what makes history so compelling, don't you think? If you enjoyed diving into these moments of catastrophic irony and seeing how tiny decisions can reshape centuries, then there is so much more to uncover. Make sure you hit that like button right now, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to The Sleeping Historian so you do unmiss the next deep dive into history. Most fascinating secrets and incredible accidents. Your support helps us keep exploring the quiet corners where history truly happens. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history.